Well, howdy everyone. I'm excited today to be talking to you about supporting youth in leadership positions and why I think this is so important. I hope you enjoy this presentation and hopefully get something out of it to apply to your own context or your own role as a youth development practitioner. My interest for this topic stems from the idea that I believe that helping youth develop into leaders is one thing, but on a completely another note is supporting them when they become leaders, when they are in these roles and serving. And I think that this is very important. To me, adults can help refine and strengthen their leadership skills, but they must also be available to encourage and mentor these youth when the going gets tough in these leadership roles. Many youth fail in leadership positions because they just don't have the support or help they need from caring adults who want them to succeed. This graphic really speaks to me in terms of adults helping youth succeed in leadership positions. Just to kind of go through it quickly, it starts with real empowerment, helping youth feel empowered to go out and make change. It also discusses adults ensuring that youth development environments are safe and friendly for these youth. And then the S, of course, is what this presentation is about, and that's the support and guidance from caring adults. Moving on is participation, and that's adults encouraging youth to participate in programs and projects and activities, and then, of course, in youth leadership positions. Adults helping youth to establish goals, helping youth understand that community matters and that their voice matters in that community. And then finally, understanding that together, youth and adults can both learn from each other. And I think this is a really powerful message and one that I'm going to hit on again throughout this presentation. I believe that supporting youth in leadership roles is relevant because adults need to help enrich positive youth development experience with these young people. Additionally, adults can help educate on stress management tools for young people in leadership positions. I also think that adults are critical to help motivate youth to continue in leadership positions. What I mean by that is that through the caring and support of positive adult mentors, this allows youth to have positive experiences and want to continue that leadership trajectory forward in their the rest of their lives, their career, and so forth. And finally, I believe that supporting and caring adults can help youth have a good positive leadership experience and in turn encourage other youth members of the group or organization to also look forward to having those leadership roles because they see the positive experience their peers are having. In terms of how this is relevant for the real world, according to the 2016 4-H National Youth Survey on Leadership, these researchers found that 2/3 of youth respondents to the survey said that they don't have the tangible skills they need to lead. This same study found that half of high school students said that they don't feel prepared to lead in college or a future career. So what does this mean for adults? I think it means that adults must step up to the plate to help youth learn and grow in leadership roles. To me, our youth are our strongest and most valuable resource we have. They're going to be at the forefront of developing research, sustainable models for agriculture, and the list goes on. For that reason, I feel that supportive and caring adults are vital to their success and are needed to help them succeed in leadership positions. Some objectives for the presentation today that we're going to cover are ways that adults can support youth in leadership roles through effective communication, through employing mentorship models, through providing continuing education, as well as relevant and accurate resources. Additionally, adults should provide constructive criticism to young people, but at the same time, implore self-examination to the adults themselves. Some of the guiding theories that have served as a framework for my presentation come from our text. The first is from the Asset Builder's Guide to Youth Leadership, and it talks about nurturing effective leaders as to not set them up for failure. It goes on to read that success will encourage further involvement on current leaders and show other young people that leadership is a positive and rewarding venture. In saying that, I know I've talked about it a little bit, but I see this all the time in the 4-H program as we have, whole families go through. We have older siblings who have kind of paved the way in terms of leadership, and then younger siblings coming through who also want to not only serve as leaders, but even build upon that further because they've seen how rewarding serving in those leadership roles is through the 4-H program. Additionally, another one from one of our texts is that youth are among our greatest resources, and I noted that earlier as well. It goes on to read that while they have the skills and understanding, they also need caring and listening adults to help stimulate the action that is required of leaders. And I know this to be true again in 4-H. We believe that all youth have the potential for success and the potential for leadership, but they do need a catalyst. They need somebody to help them along, to help nurture them and show them that they can be successful. To kind of build on the last theory, another one that I think is really important is when we're talking about adults working with youth who were already in leadership positions. That's the stage 3 youth that we learned from our text from Van Linden and Furtman. And that's just that those adults simply at that point need to be a support and encouragement for those young people. Like I said, these people have proven that they're capable of leadership, and at this point, they just need those types of encouragement, such as stress management, prioritization of tasks, things like that, to help them excel once they're in that leadership position. Now let's get into some of the strategies for actually implementing this idea of supporting youth in leadership roles. The first thing that I think is really important for adults to understand when working with young people is that effective communication is critical. For adults working with youth, this could look like scheduling regular meetings or check-in times. I think this is important because all of us, no matter what role we serve in, can benefit from checking in with folks, serving as an accountability partner. Just making sure that you're checking those things off your to-do list and having someone hold you accountable to doing so. This could mean just asking them what they're working on and maybe how you could help them in those tasks and be better at it through your guidance and leadership. One thing that's important when working with youth and scheduling these type of meetings is making sure that you schedule them at a time that they would be available. This would be things maybe like after school, maybe during a lunch hour. You might have to work around your schedule of your normal work day to accommodate the youth schedule. Another thing that I think is really important is employing mentorship models. So what I mean by this is pairing youth leaders, maybe with an adult mentor, or maybe just an older leader who's more experienced in similar positions, and make sure that those folks have similar interests or duties, maybe even similar skill sets to help kind of show the way to younger youth of how to be an effective leader in certain positions. Another thing that is an effective way of supporting young people in leadership roles is providing some type of continuing education. This could be things like workshops, guided discussions, maybe a leadership conference on issues that could help them in their daily task of serving in that role. Things such as decision making, honesty, relationship, and communication skills. One thing that I think that this really brings to the table in terms of relatability to many aspects of life is that these type of workshops or continuing education opportunities can apply to many areas of their life beyond just this certain leadership role. So it's really just a good investment not only for your organization or club or whatever the leadership position is in, but also just for the sake of the young person going forward. An additional thing that adults supporting youth in leadership roles can do to help them succeed is provide resources. A number of things fall into the category of resources for youth development, but some of the things that come to mind offhand are things like transportation. How are they going to get to the location you want them to be? Say you have an event planned or a program planned outside of your county, in the case of 4-H and county programming, those folks might need a way to get there. And in the age that we're in with working parents and things like this really might be the driving force behind if they can make it or not. Additionally, meals and registration fees can sometimes be a barrier to youth participating in certain roles because they know that their family can't provide for those certain things, and in turn they feel maybe embarrassed or see a barrier to them helping in those certain roles because of those necessities that they might not be able to pay for. On a little bit of a different note would be providing incentives. Maybe when you do have an opportunity that, like I said, might be out of the county, you are needing some youth leadership there, maybe provide an incentive for them coming. Maybe that looks like being put in a raffle or a drawing for a small gift card or something like that. Small incentives to encourage youth to participate could be beneficial in actually helping them get out of their comfort zone to participate in those opportunities. Additionally, I think it's important for adults to recognize when students are doing well. It might be important to have maybe an awards or commendation ceremony at the end of your project or program year. So maybe when these youth leaders reach their goals periodically or at the end of the year, you could recognize them in a number of different ways, fitting for the opportunities that they have completed that season. One of the most important things that I think is worth noting in terms of adults supporting youth in leadership positions is the idea of constructive criticism. These young people, while they're in kind of maybe not a weak state, but a learning state where they're kind of taking everything in, just as much that recognition is important in letting them know that they've done well, it's also very important to let them know when they might have missed the mark on things. If we don't tell them now, they, one, won't get better for future leadership positions, but two, they won't be accustomed to hearing that type of criticism that can help them get better, which in turn could lead to dissatisfaction and things like this later on in their careers. One thing that I think is critical if you are going to constructively criticize a youth for something that they might not have done quite right is to make sure to turn that into a learning opportunity. When something doesn't go quite as planned, or maybe they dropped the ball on something, you can turn it into a really great and effective learning platform or opportunity just by laying out the situation, maybe talking through a couple of scenarios that could have let that go through better. On a similar note, this learning opportunity shouldn't just be for the youth. And that brings us to our next point for adults in helping youth in leadership roles, and that's self-examination of the adults themselves. In what point when that mark was missed in the operations or whatever the task the youth needed to do, in what part of that did your role as an adult mentor fall short? How did you maybe let that young person down? As I think back in my own experience in helping with Texas 4-H ambassadors, I think of a certain instance where a youth just didn't show up for a certain opportunity. We had a booth at a livestock show. A youth didn't show up. And, of course, I had a discussion with that young person talking about how when we have commitments, especially with donors or partners, it's very important to not only follow through, but also kind of go above and beyond that. Be there early to help set up, to stay after to help break down the booth, things such as this. But not only that, when we were working through that situation, I realized that maybe I didn't provide all of the detailed information I needed to be giving. I didn't let that person know that this was at a place that our donors would be at. I also didn't provide parking information. I didn't provide the exact parking lot to be in or what time it would be necessary for that youth to show up ahead of time to help set up that booth. These are all certain instances where me as an adult mentoring or serving as a leader for young people kind of missed my own mark, and in turn, it let the whole situation down. As we reflect back on what we just talked about, I did want to share a very short but moving video from National 4-H. It really speaks to and touches on the importance of youth leadership and how we as youth leadership development practitioners have a very important and critical job in helping mold young leaders. These folks, like I mentioned before, are going to be the ones that are finding solutions to our problems of today. We're the ones that are going to be helping them to lay the foundation to do these things. Unfortunately, I can't get this video to open on a recording such as this, but I would encourage you to check that out when you can. In closing, I believe that as adults, we can provide encouragement and support for the young people that we are supporting. And I think this is important in an effort to further develop their leadership skills, ensure positive, safe, and encouraging youth development opportunities, help retain leadership, as well as encourage more young people to advance in leadership positions. If you're interested in this topic, some additional resources that might be helpful in delving further into it would be, of course, the National 4-H website, which is the first listed there. The second is Respect Youth website. This is where those 7 principles that I touched on the infographic earlier in the presentation came from. And last is an interesting journal article discussing effectively leading young leaders. And finally, here are the references that I used to guide this presentation and my background knowledge in this topic.